morning, dear students, and welcome back in the class. Today we have to start our a very new topic, and it's a very interesting topic. And this is the matter of great concern. And this topic is basically Karl Marx theory of alienation. So today we'll have discussed in detail about the alienation, means Marxist theory of alienation, that how in capitalist society the workers they feel alienation and how they are cut off from the larger process of work, right? So let us go there. Here we can write alienation, right? Here we can write the alienation, the process of alienation that we talk about, right? So when we say here alienation, we can understand like this, meaning of alienation, right? Meaning of alienation and the types of alienation, and we can say the criticisms or the further study of alienation, right? So we have to study the Marxist theory of alienation, basically how Karl Marx tried to understand the process of alienation. By the way, do you know the literal meaning of alienation? What is the literal meaning of alienation? What is the very basic understanding of alienation? Alienation means simply, when we use the term in literal sense, alienation basically alienation means simply considered the separation from, right? Separation from, right? Or it can be like a separation from, or it can be detachment, or it can be cut off from, right? So different words can be used. Alienation, the term can be the separation from, detachment from, or the cut off from. So when a person is detached from the larger processor, that it is considered the matter. So in this sense, now alienation, if a person is not connected, if a person is not integrated, though Karl Marx used the term alienation in terms of the basically economic sense, but generally alienation is term not used in economic sense. It can also be used in other areas. I'll confine myself basically the discussion of the Karl Marx theory of alienation, but it's a very broader perspective, broader idea. So generally it is considered separation from or detachment from or cut off from. Another way we can say that alienation means also that it is both subjective and objective conditions of life, right? Conditions of life. Marx would say that the term alienation is both subjective as well as the objective condition of life. Objective condition means quite observable and quite visible from outside also, that we can understand, we can observe that how it is prevalent. And subjective means how the people at their own level of psychology have the sense of detachment from the larger process of that. Okay, fine. So the two meanings I told you. In this way we can say Karl Marx, when we talk about, Karl Marx talked about alienation again in both subjective objective sense. One more meaning of alienation considered sometimes, like Marx would say, alienation is a condition of self-estrangement. Self-estrangement is a condition where a person is not only feelings detached from something, but also a feelings of hostility, a feelings of a feelings of conflict in the mind. So if you think about the workers' alienation from the larger process of the capitalist world, workers basically involves in the condition of self-estrangement, but at the same time they are detached from the larger process of work. At the same time they are also having the feelings of a kind of hostility or a kind of enmity, a kind of revenge towards the exploiter, towards the capitalist who is considered exploiter by the workers as per Marx, right? So now this concept is there. alienation concept even existed before Karl Marx. Do you know about it? The term alienation goes back to ancient time, right? The term alienation goes back to ancient time or ancient period. No? Generally, you will find the first mention we find Old Testament. The term alienation basically found in the Old Testament, right? The term alienation found in the Old Testament. In fact, we found in other books, materials. First time alienation properly talked by Hegel. Do you know Hegel? Friedrich Hegel. Hegel was a great philosopher and the great architect of supporter of concept of idealism, or talked about the dialectical idealism, right? So Hegel was a great German philosopher. Before Marx, Hegel philosophy had great impact in the philosophical world in Europe. So Hegel, for the first time, this way here, though term existed, Hegel in little bit detail talked about the concept of alienation. And Hegel discussed about the concept of alienation in metaphysical sense. Hegel used the term in metaphysical sense. Hegel used the term alienation in metaphysical sense. And he used the term in metaphysical sense means what? Metaphysical sense means Hegel say alienation involves detachment from true essence of life. Detachment from true essence of life means if a person is alienated in metaphysical sense, then he considers the existing reality of this earth as the illusion, and consider the another world, another reality as the reality, true reality. Like, even in Indian people, you will come to know about those who are talking about the ideas of moksha, and they say the ultimate reality is not this universe. This sansara, this earth is the place where people have to take birth, again rebirth, and they have to go through the consequences of their karma. So ultimate way of life is outside this world. So here life means not true life. Here whatever you think the material world and entire thing is an illusion. And therefore, in this sense, when a person thinks like that, even this body is mortal. Ye kaya, ye sarir, ye sab kuch one day is to depart. सब कुछ मर जाएगा, खत्म हो जाएगा. इसलिए शरीर से भी प्यार मत करो. This body is destructible, mortal, don't love. Soul is immortal, love your soul. So in the process, Hegel would say that those in metaphysical sense alienation, a person don't love its true essence, its true existence. In fact, a person is careless about its own body, about its mind, about its interest, and a person is detached to a world, the world, sometimes a matter of debate. So Hegel's concept of alienation is in metaphysical sense. Karl Marx, was deeply influenced by the idea of Hegel. You better understand, when Karl Marx took admission in Berlin University, he was interested to philosophy, and there was a very active group was there in Berlin University that was known as the Young Hegelian. So Karl Marx gradually became the member of the Young Hegelian. So being the part of Young Hegelian, being the member of Young Hegelian, Karl Marx basically tried to understand Hegel, and he was influenced by the Hegel's idea of dialectics, right? Influenced by the Hegel's concept of dialectics, law of dialectics, how there is a contradiction between mutual contradictions between two opposite forces. So dialectics means a study of contradiction between two opposite forces. So Karl Marx borrowed the idea of dialectics from Hegel. At the same time, Karl Marx was not convinced with the concept of idealism of the Hegel, and Karl Marx rejected this idea and developed the concept of materialism, matter. Karl Marx thinks matter is the ultimate essence of life, right? And therefore, Karl Marx concept is known as the dialectical materialism. An application of the concept of dialectical materialism to the human history, to the study of human society, human history, and therefore this concept is known as the basically historical materialism. So historical materialism is the application of dialectical materialism. Clear, fine, done. Now come to the point. So Karl Marx also influenced by the idea. So Karl Marx also studied Hegel's concept. So also influenced by the idea of alienation, number one. Number two, Karl Marx himself lived in such a society that his writing was so radical that he was not allowed to be the part of Germany. He was banished from Germany, went to France, then went to Belgium, again from Belgium, ousted from Belgium, again came to France, again came to Germany, and finally no space for this in these countries. His friend Friedrich Engels helped Karl Marx, and Karl Marx finally shifted for the entire part of life to Britain. And in the entire process, even in the Britain, Karl Marx's life was not very active life in terms of the social life. Karl Marx was in most of the time spent in library, most of the time writing on different issues of the world, contemporary issues of the world, you know. So in the process, Karl Marx himself witnessed a condition of great economic miseries and suffering. Entire Karl Marx family members suffered and finished because of the poverty. Karl Marx's entire life was poverty-ridden. So Karl Marx, on the one hand, he observed how alienation existed in capitalist world. He himself was alienated. He himself found alienated because of a prevalence of the dehumanizing condition in the capitalist world. And therefore, Karl Marx was compelled or motivated to write on alienation. Therefore, Karl Marx has given a very comprehensive idea on the concept of alienation. Fine. So Karl Marx concept when we talk about, अब आते हैं थोड़ा सा ना, come here, Marx on alienation. Marx on alienation. So when we talk about the Marx on alienation, first we can say Marx concept of alienation is basically sociological. Marx has given the sociological explanation of alienation, right? Marx has given the sociological explanation of alienation. Holding that, Marx simply say that alienation is the product of 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 social structure. Alienation is the product of social structure of capitalism, right? देख लो, Hegel talked about alienation in metaphysical sense. Marx says alienation is the product of social structure of capitalism. So it is the structure of capitalism that creates the alienation. So alienation is a deeply rooted. Therefore, Marx would say that alienation is rooted to the nature of society, right? Okay, alienation is rooted to the nature of society, as Marx basically talks about. Holding that, so Marx would say, therefore Marx would say that alienation basically involves, Marx would say that alienation basically involves objectification, process of objectification, right? So objectification is the practice of alienation. Objectification is the practice of alienation. Marx would say objectification is the practice of alienation. Holding that, objectification means what? When something is treated as a commodity, as a means. So when something is treated as an instrument of something and objectified, even humans are objectified. Not only objects are objectified, humans are also objectified in the capitalist society. And that is why Marx told about this idea. Na? So objectification is the practice of alienation. Therefore, alienation is, सारे words to be kept in mind. एग्जाम के लिए सारे important words होते हैं. These are important words for examination. So alienation is the practice of, right? Now we can say alienation is the practice of objectification is the practice of alienation. So alienation is the condition of one word I am writing here. Alienation is the condition of dehumanization. Alienation therefore is a condition of dehumanization. How society is dehumanized? The human gradually, the essence of humanity is lost. Human's essence is very different, but it is lost in the capitalist world this way. Now, Marx begins from the idea. Marx simply say that actually it is deeply rooted in the capitalist society. Marx begins from the fact that Marx say work is fulfilling, work is meaningful, work involves creativity. Let me write here, you will be able to understand properly. Marx simply say, Marx talks about the work. Marx talks about the work. कहते हैं work is a very important thing. Work is the, begins from the fact Marx simply say that work is basically meaningful. Work is meaningful, right? Work is fulfilling. ये संतोष देता है. Work is meaningful, work is fulfilling, work is meaningful, work is fulfilling, and work is creative. Work is creative. And creative or innovative. So work gives justification to life. A person can find its own life meaningful. A person can have justification of its own life on the basis of its own work. Suppose if today I justify myself, I identify myself, I try to understand my identity, definitely my identity today in society is in terms of a teacher. Okay, so my work gives me identity. And a person cannot live without identity. We are social creation, so we also live with identity. We can have our caste identity, class identity, professional identity, gender identity. So professional identity, work gives identity, number one. Work gives meaning to the life. Work is fulfilling and work is also creative. All great creation has happened through the work. So work should not be considered only as a means of livelihood. Rather, work is essence of life. Unfortunately, in capitalism, work has been reduced only as a means of livelihood, means of profit. So how the essence of work has changed? So Marx simply say, when we talk about the work, Marx would simply say work in pre-capitalist society and work in pre-capitalist society, right? Marx would say work in the pre-capitalist society, right? And Marx would say work in capitalist society. Think about capitalist society. So work in capitalist society and work in the pre-capitalist society. Marx would say that work is a pre-capitalist society is as I told you, in a pre-capitalist society, primitive society, agricultural society, people going to do the work at agricultural field, playing the work, dancing, playing, singing, doing the work. When went for hunting animals, they're running, shouting, thrilling, and the work is nice. Work was just not to capture an animal in the past, but work was also very, very important. Work gave them a meaning, a sense of life. So work was basically meaningful. Again writing same word. Work was meaningful and work was the fulfilling. Work was fulfilling or giving satisfaction. And work was very creative. Work was also thrilling. In capitalist society, work is meaningless. Work is a meaningless. Work is just a means of survival. Work become a means of survival. So what will happen? So in capitalist society, there will be dissatisfaction. There will be dissatisfaction. And purpose of work is a profit. Main concern is a profit. Generate more and more surplus, go for profit. So work for profit, work for surplus. Work means not creativity. So creativity is lost and worker don't feel attached to the condition. So coming to the point, as per Marx, it is the nature of capitalist society that create alienation. In pre-capitalist society, alienation was not found. In pre-capitalist society, work was thrilling, work was romantic, work was very much participative. So people used to participate. So workplace was a place of attachment. Today in capitalist society, place of detachment. And accordingly, Karl Marx talked about 4 types of alienation, right? Karl Marx talked about alienation and 4. When we talk about here, Karl Marx talked about types of alienation. When we talk about types, Karl Marx talked about 4 types of alienation found in the capitalist world. Or in fact, we can say these are the 4 different forms of alienation. First, Karl Marx talked about like alienation from product that they produce. Second, the alienation from production process. Alienation from production process. Third, he talks about like alienation from fellow beings. Alienation from fellow beings. And fourth one talked about like alienation from himself. Karl Marx talked about that these are the 4 stages, or we can say the process of alienation. First, alienation from the product. Why? सब जगह word होगा क्या? Why alienation? Why common to all? Why alienation from the product? Karl Marx say alienation from the product is because the product become commodities. Product becomes commodities. See, those who produce something, for whom it's just not a product, his entire energy, emotion and innovation and every creativity is attached to the work. So for the worker, just it is not a product, but for capitalist, it is a product to the market. And that's why this condition is there. First, product. Second, considered no control over own product. No control over own product. वो जो खुद ही बनाता है जो चीजों को, उस चीज पर उसका कंट्रोल नहीं होता. Whatever they produce now become the alien product, controlled by some alien people. Okay, like if a person makes a Nike shoes, pair of Nike shoes, now it is controlled by Malik and he don't have control. Cannot decide the destiny of the person. First one. Second, when we talk about the alienation from the product process, because work is monotonous, work become the monotony is found at the place of work. Work is more repetitive. Work is more like exhaustive, or work is more monotonous, repetitive, and work is also considered that sometimes this involves monotony and the repetitive work, and work become more and more boring. So rather than attachment towards the process of work, a person has a sense of detachment. So workplace is not the place of attraction. Workplace is a place where out of compulsion people go to work. कितना बड़ा change हो रहा है देखो कि work gives meaning and everything to life, but here it is not to be there. Second, third is considered alienation from fellow being. Why the workers alienated? Karl Marx say work is a very collective action. People participate in the process of work, all cooperate towards each other, and therefore they find the meaningfulness in the work. But here, even fellow beings are also competitors. Iska reason is why detachment from the fellow beings? High division of labor is found. So isolation at the place of work. Sometimes competition. This fact is there, no? Sometimes there is the competition. Among the workers, there is a competition. Sometimes capitalist societies set one worker against the another worker. So workers and workers, they are not just fellow beings, not friends, but workers and workers also the competitor. Unnecessary competition, unfair competition, unhealthy competition, just to keep them divided. And therefore this happens. So alienation. And suppose if a person is alienated from the product, process, fellow beings, so worker himself is alienated from himself, means here worker's identity is lost. Worker's identity is lost. It's just a number first, and second, worker's identity lost, and second, sometimes the life itself become the meaningless. So this meaningless condition and this identity loss on the part of the workers, this happens. In this way, it is true that Karl Marx talks about alienation, that alienation is the product of the capitalist society. Capitalist society is more concerned to the promotion of the self-interest and going for profit making. So work is reduced only as a means of livelihood. So the work is not creative, work is exhaustive, repetitive, monotonous, and therefore workers don't feel attached to the work. Even exploitation at the place of work. So workplace is not own place, workplace is somebody else's place. Workplace is the capitalist place, not the worker's place. So worker feel detached, no ownership, detachment, and ultimately sometimes one more word here, also one more term he used, sometimes in capitalist society products become more important than whoever is the producer. And this term is known as the, very nice word is there. The term is a commodity. The term is a commodity fetishism. The commodity fetishism is a word that is Karl Marx say the product become more important. Product become fetish and more important, something godly like particles, godly like things. So people have a special treatment to them, like a Audi car, like the Apple mobile. So people who make it is less important and product become more important. This condition of commodity fetishism also alienates the workers. Fine. So clear from the above, I just concluded this way. In capitalist society, Karl Marx has given sociological definition of the alienation. Karl Marx simply say alienation is both objective subjective condition, and alienation found only in capitalist society, almost non-existence in pre-capitalist society. It was very less, but very much in capitalist society because of the nature of the capitalist society itself. Fine. Later on, Karl Marx theory is criticized by many people, like C. Mills, who says that alienation was basically prevalent not only among the workers, alienation is also prevalent even in the service sector, as C. Mills found in American society, it's called the personality market. So today is the personality market. So skills with things are replaced with the skills with personality. Personality is more important than the content, number one. Number two, even Herbert Marcuse, we can say kind of neo-Marxist. Herbert Marcuse also tried to understand alienation in his concept or book, One-Dimensional Man. Herbert Marcuse had tried to say that alienation not only confined to the place of work, even leisure is also alienated, right? Second, one more is the Goldthorpe. One, the severe criticism given by the Goldthorpe. I know some people have studied Goldthorpe, but not right. Goldthorpe, he says that alienation is basically actor's definition of situation. Alienation is the actor's definition of a situation. So, at the same place of work, all people cannot be equally alienated. Some professions where alienation is more, some professions alienation is less. Even workers, all are not equally alienated. Some workers more alienated, some workers less alienated. So, how the workers define their work, how they define themselves, define their work, how they connect with the place of work, accordingly alienation would be there. Therefore, that Karl Marx theory of alienation is not without criticism. But at last, in conclusion, it can be held that though Karl Marx theory may have some limitations, but Karl Marx concept of alienation is so important, not only for your examination point of view in UPSC, but also the real condition happens in the capitalist world. So if we have to understand the nature of people, nature of work, how people have connection, disconnection at the place of work, how to make work more like a lively, how to connect the people to the work, we'll have to understand Karl Marx's concept of alienation, and we'll have to create the conditions of de-alienation at the place of work by different methods. Thank you very much for today and watching the concept of alienation at the SRIRAM's platform. Again, welcome to all of you, and now take care and have a good day. Thank you. Bye-bye.